Before I begin, I want to welcome everyone. I want to remind you that this is a public meeting and we have, it's being recorded, so we are being broadcast. And I want to thank our friend in the back, Jack Rogers, for donating his time to us and helping record this, so thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause for him. Let's begin the meeting by an introduction. What I'd like to do, though, before we get to the actual introduction of all our members, I just want to make sure we can understand what the purpose of our meeting is really all about. This meeting tonight is a mechanism for citizens to provide input to the development of our budgets. The idea is to help inform the leaders of your town what's acceptable and what may not be acceptable for the finances to begin the budget season. The idea also is to have good ones from you as a citizen. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what it is that you think we should consider that we may not have considered. And before I get into the process and introduce everyone, I want to share a little story. Yesterday I was traveling. I traveled quite a bit with my work, and I was returning home from a flight from Chicago. And on the plane, we were crossing probably through somewhere in the Great Lakes, and there was a bit of turbulence. And the plane was shaking up pretty well, and I was thinking, I haven't been on a plane flight that's done this in quite a long time. But I thought about it, and I said, you know, I know the pilot is going to be doing his best right now. And that's because we both have the same skin in the game. He wants to make sure this thing lands safely as well as I. And he happens to be a little more experienced, so he's not looking for my input right now, but I'm going to trust him that he's going to do his best for me. And he got us out of that turbulence and we landed safely. I use that story as an example because what I want to do is talk to you about the boards. And as we begin our introduction, I want to make sure you understand what these boards are all about. Every one of these members, the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance, every one of these members are here because they want to make sure that this town grows, does all the good things. They love this town, and they also want to make sure that they're responsible. They're in this plane with everyone else, and they want to ensure everyone is happy and we do great things. So with that, let me go through our process, and then we can begin the introductions. First, this is a public meeting, and thus what the idea to do is to provide some brief information from each of the respective boards. So we're going to have the Board of Selectmen share some insights, Board of Finance, and Board of Education. Our intent is to inform as many citizens as possible and provide an accurate and timely answer to questions. So we're going to use the following approach to get to the questions. We invite everyone to speak. We want to hear your thoughts, concerns, or questions. And then we ask when you do speak, please share your name and your address, just so we have a better idea of who you are. Regarding speaking, we're hoping that you can limit your comments to 3 minutes. However, if you need more time, we can extend that or give you an opportunity after everyone has had a chance to speak. Seeing the large number of people that are in attendance today, I'm not sure that's going to be a real problem. What we are not doing tonight is answering very specific questions. What we'd rather do is record your question, post them on the town Board of Education website within a week, or also on our own, on the Finance Board's website, just to make sure that we will research whatever it is you ask. If there's a question, we provide you accurate information and post it for everyone to know. And if you need further clarification, at the next Finance Board meeting, you can bring those questions up to us then. If you have any specific questions for any specific board, I ask that you we invite you to address that board specifically. So now what I'd like to do is ask each chairman to introduce the members of their board. And tonight what I'll do is I'll begin with Mr. Emmett Lyman, our first selectman.
Thank you. I'm Emmett Lyman, first selectman. Sue Link, selectman, and Rob Smith, another selectman.
Okay, very good, thank you. And now our chairman of our Board of Education, Brian Perry.
Great, thank you. I'd like to introduce Mr. Reese, Superintendent of Schools. Shadi, the board secretary, Ms. Blatchek, Ms. Hendry, and Mr. English.
Thank you, and my name is Bill DeCristofaro. To my left is Mr. Loria, Mr. Dutch. You're hiding behind him, I didn't see that. Mr. Gelston, Ms. Gianta, and Mr. Thompson. How could I forget my He's known as okay, so let us begin. We'll start with next slide, please. We'll start with my section on the Board of Finance and my. So I want to talk about a few things that we attempted to accomplish this year and we achieved as we were going over the last budget cycle. One of the big things we really wanted to do and make sure that we understood was that we're adopting a new approach to the budget process. So by providing 2 times for the public to provide input, we would allow more information to be flowed into us and try to get your acceptance and understanding of the direction we're heading. And so as a result, we provide this tri-board meeting, and then later we'll provide a budget forum. We're going to continue this practice this year and allow us to get as much citizen comment as possible. One of the other things was that we wanted to get a budget last year that would pass on the first referendum. So that meant a lot of hard work and trying to make sure that we were able to keep it acceptable to our townspeople. And we're successful. We're really pleased with that, and we strive to do the same thing in our 2019 budget. One of the things that I also think is important to understand is we're also providing some guidance to our respective boards. So the Board of Finance is stating that we of course want to analyze every expenditure and make sure that everything is reasonable. And then we also want to make sure that we can, as a second guideline, try to make sure that we're going to try to keep a stable mill rate. Now a lot of work went on over the past year, so I'll begin with the communications subcommittee. They published several articles in the East Haddam News, and I want to also thank the East Haddam News for providing a lot of information for us to be able to speak in a public forum. And with that, we are providing what we believe is better insights to the community. The second group that I'd like to recognize would be the Financial Policy Subcommittee. And right now, we're going through a process of developing formal financial policies that the town can follow, not only now, but going into the future. And big picture goal is that we can hopefully establish a high credit rating, upgrading ourselves from a great grade right now to a AAA as our goal. And as we are right now at the second highest rating today. And we also have a third committee that's part of another group, and that's our Financial Needs Subcommittee. And what they're trying to do is look at what the needs are of the town and work in collaboration with the leadership of the Board of Education to make sure that we are always addressing the future of this town, not only just the expenditures of this coming year. Next slide, please. At this time, what I'd like to do is introduce Emmett Lyman, our Board of Selectmen, our first selectman, and ask you to please provide current state of affairs.
Okay, we've had a pretty good year. And it started off, we're about $500,000 in the general fund with the surplus from last year. And about half of that comes from the state. They reconsidered many things they were cutting. And so we got quite a bit more from them than we had expected. And the other half is from spending very carefully. We had a budget freeze in place for the last year. And doesn't mean we don't spend, but it means that people have to come to me. They're going to spend over $1,000 and say, do we really need this? We get a chance to talk about it. In the end, we're saving a great deal of money. Bill already mentioned the Standard & Poor's rating. We're at AA+ right now. We've had a very good audit this year, and we're looking forward to improvement upon that. There's only one more step, AAA. And it'll be awfully nice to have that, and it'll make a big difference in terms of our bonding and how the credit bureaus municipal office complex. We moved into it last February, had the grand opening later in May, and we brought that in under budget. At the moment, it looks to be about $140,000 under budget. So we did very well by that. The firehouse renovations, we had 2 firehouses we renovated. Those are on budget once again. And that's a pretty good record because when we did the elementary school, we also came in under budget. That's the third of our capital projects. We'll have to see how the radio turns out. That's still in process. We had quite a bit of damage back in September, and it worked out to about $3.7 million. A lot of concern. That's a very big nut for us to try to swallow. FEMA came in. The thresholds were $800,000 for the county. We met that easily. We had $3.7 million of damage here. And the question was the state. They came in at $6.2 million. The threshold for FEMA was about 5.3. So we represent well over half the damage that was done. This past Wednesday, the governor announced that FEMA had approved us. We are going to get 75% on the monies that we spend in repair from town, putting it back together again. That's a tremendous, tremendous amount of money and a wonderful help for us. Unfortunately, the people who were hurt don't get money directly from FEMA. They will, however, get low-interest loans made available to them. So it's going to be a good deal all the way around on that, and a very welcome help. Tree removal, that becomes or remains a big problem. It's only gotten worse. We started out with the ashes and thought that was going to be all of it. Turned out that the gypsy moths had done a tremendous job on the oaks, so we're losing a great many oaks as well. We're looking into that. There's still not a lot of answers for it. The Council of Government, the Lower Connecticut River Council of Government, is looking into it, trying to figure out how we can work together, what we can do to deal with that expense. For us, the estimate right now is about 1,400 trees that are going to have to come down, and the cost probably averages close to $700 per tree to have them removed. It has to be done professionally, especially when there are electrical wires involved anywhere near. We've been in touch with Kerma. They've offered advice. We've got a contract with one of the local tree services, Charlie Island, and that's working out very well for us. We've applied for a couple of grants, one for East Haddam Village, a brownfield grant. The second one in joint with Haddam for a sidewalk across the bridge when they do that renovation. The second one is an $18 million one for the sidewalk. The brownfield hopefully will cover everything that is necessary there. Decisions are expected this December. I would hope before Christmas on both of those. They'll help us moving forward. At this moment, financing those 4 capital projects I mentioned, because we made the effort well ahead, knowing that we're going to get into these projects. We're very well positioned. We're not going to see a lot of tax bumps. We're not going to see a lot of problems as a result of them. We're in a position to handle them. We've got an RFQ. It's about to be completed for potential developers for the village area down by the bridge. We're looking for that to go out by early January. We are this year utilizing the zero-based budget process. So we start right from zero and build the budgets, trying to be as economical as we can, trying to do the best possible job that we can do. Our East Haddam library system is under review right now. We're still awaiting a decision from, at this point, the Superior Court. The Reading Room Association would like to transfer the East Haddam Free Public Library to the town. Because of the way the original will was set up and they received the property, we have to get permission. The probate court elected not to deal with that, so it ended up in Superior Court. Hopefully, we're going to see a decision on that in the near term, and then we'll be going to a town meeting to make that final decision. Do we want to accept that library and build a new system with that as part of it? Transfer station, we are implementing the recommendations from them. January is going to be a very interesting month in connection with that. We're putting together a series of articles for the East Town News. And once those have run, we're probably going to be going to town meeting for some of the decisions to be made, hopefully within the month of January, certainly by February. That about sums it up for me.
Thank you very much. At this time, let me introduce Brian Perry, Chairman of the Board of Education. He'll brief us on the Board of Education status.
I'm going to actually have the superintendent of schools review our strategic plan as well as some great things that are happening in our schools.
Good evening. So we always start with our strategic plan because just to let everybody know that we have a 5-year running plan which actually ends in the next budget year. And that plan really focuses on making sure our students have the curriculum that they need to have, to work on the instructional experiences, making sure that they include inquiry, making sure that they support our students with their problem solving, with innovation, and giving them choice along the way to help them become responsible adults. We also look to support them by measuring what they're learning and making sure that that measurement, what we're using to measure, is also meaningful to them. And that is one of our major emphases. Another place is to allow them to work in an environment that is conducive to learning, and especially conducive to learning in an environment like they will be expected to when they exit high school. That's collaborative, that is technology-based, that is communication in multiple forms, and presentation in multiple forms. We've had some great experience in the next slide, and some really great things are happening. We've had the ability to really infuse technology into our curriculum, where it is, rarely a day a student goes through school in any grade level where they're not engaged on technology, benefiting from the resources that are available there. And there's certainly classes that also do not have technology in them at times, but the ability for us to present them with technology really makes a big difference. Our STEM classes, if you watch the news about what kinds of positions are available in Connecticut, what you hear is there's a lot of high-tech positions in Connecticut that are actually very difficult to fill. And so that's one of the reasons we focus our students and have a K-12 STEM program where students are exposed to that process where they're working through science, technology, engineering, and math concepts. We also like to support our students as the curriculum becomes more rigorous. We are finding our students need opportunities to work through that curriculum, to work on those individualized projects. And so some of that means that some of our programs go into summer, and offer other opportunities for our students even during the school day, outside of the classroom. We're looking for, to continue to offer opportunities. One of the reasons our budget has maintained a stability to it in the last few years is because our special education programming has been able to be mostly done in-house and not sending students all over the state of Connecticut for their services that they need. This also provides them constant direct interactions with the community. And as they become adults, they're here in our transition program working with employers that are local and getting to know those employers. And that's really important for them, and it also supports us for a stable budget scenario. We also look forward to really encouraging our students to experience deep learning, experience learning that takes them and works through what their interests are, what they're passionate about, and exploring finding their own meaning. We also encourage our students to lead their own learning. now with wonderful systems like National History Day, where they really start with some inquiry and move into all kinds of interesting topics that are meaningful to them, it is a totally different experience for our students than it was when we just basically listened to our teachers like we did years ago. Just a few things on the horizon that we'd like to talk about as the next slide is the insurance premiums. We always get at this time of year what is the highest possible amount. And the highest possible amount for premium is 10% increase. That's not unusual. That's similar to what we've seen in the past. And that amounts to about $320,000. If everything stays status quo, our salary increases are 2.46%, and that is approximately $300,000 as well. Now, those numbers usually come down by the time we're in a final budget mode, but those are kind of the high end of our experience. And really, there's not anything significant, not necessarily anything significant that's going to, sometimes we have things in our budget that we're anticipating are really going to suck us for. We don't really have that. If you were here last year, you know we put together a slide that kind of takes you through, the next slide, it kind of takes you through the longitudinal budget comparison. And the way to read this slide is to take the blue pieces, and that is our actual budget increases. So if you go along, you'll see that there's actually some negatives in 2010, 2013, 2015, and some of those were years that there were zeros, and with the zeros came, we ended up giving some money back at the end of the year, so they actually were negative numbers. So the next piece of it is the red line. The red line is actually, if you take all of those blue pieces and average them out for over those years, you get the red line, which is the average increase for the Board of Ed budget is about 0.8% from year to year, which is a nice low number. So the next piece is I would take you to the orange. The orange is our cost of living increase. So that is directly from the Social Security website. And you see how the budget typically, other than 2016, typically the budget increase is well under the cost of living increase. If you go to the next piece I would point you to is the yellow line. It goes across horizontally. And that yellow line is the average of the cost of living increase. And I just share with you the 0.8% where the red line goes across versus the yellow line that goes across at about 1.6%. Shows you the difference in what Social Security increases are, which is really set at what the government believes is the cost of living, and our budget increases. So we've stayed below that for that entire time. Now that crazy blue line that goes up and over and kind of does a little mountain, that is our contractual obligations. So if all things stayed the same, and we just, people receive their raises as they would get them through the contracts, that blue line is the percentage to the whole budget that those contract numbers would have meant to us. So as you can see, that ranges from our actual budget increase anywhere from, actually I guess in 2011, it was below the number was below our budget increase, but after that, we are anywhere from just under 1% to almost 2% to anywhere in between. From the blue line versus the blue pillars. Which again is partly because of health insurance savings, partly is because of staff reductions, and for other ways of trying to do more for less. So, to move on to the next slide, we do have some capital priorities coming, and this, along the high school roof is really a priority at this point. It is starting to deteriorate. It is 23 years old, so it has lost its warranty a couple of years ago. This has been on the agenda for a number of years, but because it's a sizable amount, we are, it's hard to keep asking for types of things. So, but it's at the point now where we really need to take care of it. The next piece is the the elementary school envelope. The windows and doors of the elementary school are in need of replacement. There's actually windows falling out occasionally, and there's a number of places where they've been replaced with plexiglass sheets to make sure there's something there. But essentially, the windows and doors are many of which are vintage 1960s. So that's something we need to look at. The high school parking lot is another one, and because it is in need of really to be ripped out, similar to the way the elementary schools was. It is also over a $200,000 project, unfortunately, to take care of that project. So it drains on and it's a smooth parking lot. But back to our operating budget, which is on the next slide. We have a few places where, as we look to develop this budget, we're looking to make sure our teachers have professional development in the area of differentiation, of student-centered learning, and working with data, because we're expected to show performance and show how students are learning, and with the new rigor of the curriculum, that's a little more difficult than it used to be. So we're working on that. In instruction, we're continuing to develop our math program. We have, for a number of years, had difficulty sustaining our math scores. Last year we had a really bright spot where our high school SAT scores actually jumped. The number of points actually went from below the average to above average in 1 year, and we were very excited about that. We want to continue that. We are also considering trying to figure out what the best option is. In the world of human resources, hiring and working through all the processes that are in place, it's a highly litigious area for us, and we are finding ourselves continuing to be strapped in terms of time and the ability to make sure that that work is done with fidelity and done in a proactive manner. Right now, it is something that myself and my assistant really process through as one of our, essentially one of our side jobs. And so to have some help in that would be very helpful to us. There's also some places where that really project coordination is the best term for it, where there are instructional projects, data projects, and work like that, that we need somebody, not administration, but somebody helping us along the way to support that type of work as our work continues to get more complicated and we continue to ask more and more of our staff, but there's still some places where we could really use some assistance in that area. But I would just love to leave on a very positive note that it's been really a very productive session. We've had a wonderful experience with our teaching staff, and it's been a great year so far, and we're looking to a great year next year as well. Thank you.
It's now time for public input. So I invite anyone to come forward. We have a microphone set up over here if you'd like to speak into that, or you could come into the public area and speak. And just as a reminder, please share your name and your address and let us know if you have a question for any specific board. Are there any questions or comments that someone would like to share?
First of all, I think this group that you have together in this private meeting is a great idea. Secondly, I tried to get involved with some of the 10 things.
Well, is the mic on? Have the mic.
What?
No, it seems to be off.
Well, that's probably how people would rather have it.
If you got great things to say, we'd love to hear them.
Is there a clicker?
Hello? Hello?
There we go.
You want my name again? Okay. My name is Bob Morse. I live at 37 Landing Hill Road. The first thing I said was I think having a group like this is a good idea. It's unfortunate the community didn't show up the way they should have. It's important that you have public outreach. I really do want to compliment. Last year I attended a few of the meetings of the Finance Committee, and I saw the way you ran the meetings, the involvement and so forth, and to come up with it's difficult, a difficult process. You have many departments and so forth, yet it was very clear that you as volunteers, the citizens that are volunteers go, and you seem to be very committed towards what you mentioned before, a stable mill rate. And so I don't know whether the people in the town really appreciate what you did or the work that was involved in doing that. But from this citizen, thank you very much. I was involved with the transfer station, and I'm glad to hear that in January something is going to start happening. I would be remiss in saying that I was disappointed that nothing's happened up to now, but I'm glad to hear that going forward something will happen. Nevertheless, things change, and as things have changed, which I hope that the department managers, the selectmen, and you in the finance committee, you in finance, understand what's happened. A lot of our work had to do with recyclables and coming up with a plan that would increase recyclables, which would also have the impact of decreasing cost. A friend of mine recently said that they had spoken to someone from Willimantic and said that they literally had a mountain of recyclables at their place because the Chinese have refused to take recyclables. So I came here, I did a little research after I heard that, because I don't like what people just say. So I'll give you all a document that I got. This was a CBS report that was done, so it's nothing that I came up with. But it has touched our state already. Stanford in the past was paid $75,000 for their recyclables, and last year's because of this, their cost went from revenue of $75,000 to an increase in cost of $750,000. For us, since I'm familiar with the numbers, we came in, we had about 970 tons of recyclables, for which we got paid $5 per ton by Willimantic, who we have a contract with, and then we have to pay them about $10 a ton to take it away, so it still costs us money. I would suspect, I don't know, since I'm not in the department, I didn't call Beth, I'm not part of that any longer, but you can expect that that would be renegotiated, since there's going to be a cost increase. It's going to be a substantial cost increase. Now the other part of it is then it questions recyclables, whether this is a problem that happens with this single stream recycling. It just simply hasn't worked well. I don't know whether there's an alternative, whether you can go to something which you might have had in the past. As you know, I just moved here. My old community had very different things and so forth. But it's something that you're going to have to look at. I would think that you'll have probably somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 of a hard increase that you'll probably see, unfortunately. It also questions recycling, and I know we all have different feelings about that and so forth. I'd heard in a selectmen's meeting that you plan on bringing that to a public meeting to do that. But the whole, it did just bring some questions about what the purpose of that is going to be, unless you can somehow reinvent it in a different way that makes more sense. I think I shared with you once that I came from East Hampton, Long Island, and we were probably the recycling capital of the world, and they had us having mulchable stuff, and then what we call here MSW, and separated it, and then we found after about a year of that they actually all just put it in the same thing and sent it to Pennsylvania. So that's all I really had to say. From the education standpoint, we're in I presume, a tough situation simply because we still have declining enrollments, which makes it difficult for you to provide many different types of education that your superintendent was talking about. I think it's very admirable, and it's wonderful that you were able to increase the scores. Have you had the scores that you did? So congratulations on that. And I guess the importance is providing a plan so that our education system can be among the best in the area. That's a tall thing. At the same time, managing our costs so our cost per student is similar or below the areas, the different school districts in this area. And that's something that I don't know whether you're measured on that, but that to me would be the two central measures. That's all I have to say. But thank you very much for your time. And again, a good job again, I was so impressed by the Finance Committee and what you did last year. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to speak and address our committees?
Who has education? Who has transfer station?
Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Being that there are no longer any questions, what we'll do is we will now allow each of the two boards, the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, to adjourn their meetings. The Board of Finance will have a recess and reconvene and continue on with our finance meeting. Mr. Lyman?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Board of Finance, may I have a motion to have a recess?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. We will reconvene at 7:15.
Safely return.
It is what it is. I think they're responsible for another Washington fire. Are we going to be responsible for that?
Sorry, I didn't make the agenda. Oh.
So, have you talked to anyone?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was. Oh yeah. Well, that's.
No. I mean, he actually, this will only take us 1.5 times.
Yes, I'm here tomorrow, all day. Let's hope for an exciting day.
Probably not.
Okay. On our agenda, the first item is approval of the minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes from November 19th. Hopefully you were able to review and make observations. May I have a motion to accept the November 19th minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion, any changes, corrections, deletions? Yes,
Mr. Chairman, yes, after the Board of Selectmen's report is over, the minutes state Mr. Langton responded to any board questions, but they're not listed in the minutes. I remember that one of my questions was, were the losses in the transfer station? Yep. Were the losses in the operation of the transfer station? Is there some reason why the questions were deleted from the meeting minutes and just an oversight? I know Jeff's not here, right? So,
What I was provided. Did you want to table them to your next meeting? We could look to elaborate greater.
okay. That'd be okay with me. Because I think it's important that the questions be in the minutes, the public can read them as well. That's my purpose.
I have no objection to that. Any comment from any of the other members? Todd, you refer to the top of page 6, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely right. Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so I now need a motion to amend my motion that you're not approving the minutes. However, I need a motion to say we are going to defer these minutes, this set of minutes from November 17th to our next board meeting.
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our list was some correspondence we received from the CCM. So for those of you who have attended any of the workshops provided by the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, they're quite useful. And the next one, and you received it in your packet, is a meeting scheduled for Saturday, January 5th. And I've gone to the same one twice. And each time I go, if I wasn't traveling then, I would definitely do it again. Each time I go, I find a benefit. I learn a little bit more about the role that we serve and some fine-tuning of things to make life a little easier. So I encourage you to look at it. If you can make the time to do it, I would invite you to do so. And please let Cindy know as soon as you can so that she can sign you up for the program.
Can we just tell you now? Todd already emailed me, you said Tracy? Yeah. And I've gone like 4 or 5 times, and I'll go to this one, it's helpful.
Very good. Any other questions on that? Okay, let's move down to the next item is Chairman's report. I'll start with the tax collector's report. We have received a copy of that. We have our tax collector in attendance tonight, so are there any questions on that at all? Harvey? Mr. Thomas? No. You've done that, so make sure you knew what it was.
Is it?
Tracy?
Not like this, but we did questions last month, and she wasn't here, so.
You want to address those?
Yeah, so, a few months ago, a couple months ago, you had given us the delinquents, and then list them out and everything. Some of them go back 3 years or something, right? So, we're just curious, is there a procedure, like how do you determine next steps? And do you have a policy book, or are you going by statute?
My typical policy is 3 years and or $10,000. There are circumstances that change that. If I was in foreclosure, it'll go immediately. The 13 and 14 years that are on the report, that is one property that is going this time, if they don't get out of the criteria. I was told beginning of this year did not send it. And they all know that it is gone. It's not taken care of by the end of this year. So there are different circumstances. Bankruptcy stops you from being able to send someone. This one originally didn't go 2 years ago because they had just been deceased. I was trying to get time before we have.
Right.
It still hasn't happened.
So some of the ones that were there, are there payments coming in so that it's kind of still active?
Some of them make payments, the ones that make payments know they have to get that third year paid to get out of the criteria. Others just ignore it till the 3 years come up and we pay the third year in full.
So where's the 3 years from?
It's my decision.
Why 3 years?
It gives people time to try and, you know,
But then
get on
you
the.
get into it, you dig a bigger hole, right?
I can't send people after a year in good conscience and have people lose their homes because they lost their job and can't find work right now. They've been diagnosed with cancer, they can't work right now. You know, there's no money coming in. I can try and give them time to get through it. Again, that's why there's a dollar cap. You know, if it's $10,000 for 1 year, you're gonna go. Just because I don't want it snowballing to $50,000.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah. What's other people doing, you know, like other?
I'm pretty much the average. Some of them don't do them at all. They have 15 years of delinquent real estate taxes. Some of them give them a year. Some of them sell all their liens to companies. And then that person that purchased the lien can do whatever they want to their property. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
It is loosely written. It's a tax collector's discretion for how.
And that, in the statute, that's what it says. Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Gilson?
Denise answered my question, thank you.
Mr. Duff?
No, that approach seems fair to me.
Questions? Would you like to?
I did have a question last month about the remote scan.
Yeah,
I was just curious with that.
well, it's very simple. What is remote scan? I know the term is kind of interesting to me when it's got almost $200,000 attached to it. But you just basically scan.
I have a machine that scanned it right in, and the batches go every time I do a deposit right to the bank.
Yeah, that's what Cindy explained last month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item is board subcommittee reports. Some of the information that's we may have discussed earlier through, you know, for instance, we heard today from Emmett regarding some of his first selectment stuff. So if stuff has been already added, you don't need to spend a lot of time in that space, just in the interest of time. But I'll begin with the communications subcommittee. Do you have anything to share or report to our board?
Yes, sir. We, as you may recall, from last month, we had an article in draft form, waiting for a few more edits. We did those edits. It took so long than anticipated. We anticipate the article we submitted will be in the East Haddam News this Thursday. And again, we want to thank East Haddam News, I have thanked them already, for their public service of printing our articles. And the next article will be on endowment funds. We're very blessed in this town with a lot of endowment funds, or something else that's more budget season related. Any suggestions, just send us an email, send Bruce and myself an email. I'm glad to respond.
Good.
Thank you.
Good work, too. Great work.
Thank you.
Next item then, is, as we move forward, revenue increase. Did you want to share anything on that?
Oh, well, as no forward motion in the last month, but before that, we had implemented some useful things.
Next item is financial needs roundtable, and I asked Ms. Bianca to perhaps give us an update on the meeting.
Sure. So Harvey and I attended along with First Selectman and reps from the Board of Ed and planning and zoning. So, you know, it's just kind of a beginning. Went through very preliminary numbers of what our debt situation is, total debt, debt service. We're going to be looking for, a bigger, an actual chart of, where we are. And then the question is just, how do we get the information to us from departments and committees and commissions about what their needs are, 5 to 10 years down the road. So Cindy is setting up meetings with said departments and commissions, and she is going to be asking them during the 1920 budget season, or prep, to look forward and to see what they see as, the big ticket items coming down the road. So that's how we're going to work through that. I think it's being February 4th. So the charge is to meet quarterly, at least quarterly.
Very good.
And the last committee met, 3 years or something before we came up with what we had, more than 5 years. We'll see, it'll be interesting.
And just to make it clear, what happened initially was this was a committee of the Board of Finance, and it appeared that we were sort of leading as opposed to cooperating with the rest of the boards, particularly the selectmen, and that's when our first selectman reinstituted this committee and looking at the needs of our town in the next few years so that we could address the concerns that we have and make projections so that we can try to achieve almost everything as long as we have a plan, and that's where they're going. So, and anyone else like to add anything from that subject? All right, good. I appreciate your work. You're doing great things. Next item is financial policies. I'll bring through that portion. What you have in front of you, the first item I'd like you to review is the special revenue fund. This is something discussed that we'd like to implement right away to basically account for all police services together to make it a little bit easier when we're looking at the expenditures for law enforcement and to look at the revenues that are being collected in some of the charges for services and grants that we receive. And by doing it, it might be a lot easier for people to help make decisions. So I'm assuming you had an opportunity to review this in your packet, and I'd like someone, if they could, to make a motion to approve the special revenue fund policy as stated and make it effective for January 1st.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. So this was on the revenue side. This conversation continues to the reserve fund. Same kind of idea. We want to try to allocate this so that it's a little easier for us to understand. I believe we have a copy of this also. And may I invite someone to make a motion to approve the police reserve fund policy as presented effective January 1st, 2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Very great. Next item is, again, there's been a fair amount of progress on our budget policies. Our committee came forth with some discussion on this that say, okay, we have some budget policies in place. The ink is still kind of wet on them, if you will. And what we thought might be best is to, rather than approve budget policies that have not really been tested by any experience, and then find out that maybe we might not be in the right direction, what we're hoping to do is to implement some of the policies, use them almost as a guideline for this coming budget season, and then utilizing the information we gather and the experience we enjoy to help formulate our official budget policy for next year. So what I'm asking is, and this was actually done as a result of some significant deliberation on the subcommittee and some ideas where we were. What I'm asking is a motion that this might be a good idea to implement the budget policies, to implement the policy process. We want to start the process that we explored and started working with, and then to evaluate the policies at the end of this budget season, making any necessary changes or revisions so we have an official budget policy statement for ourselves going forward. So, can someone make a motion to that effect?
I move to implement the proposed budget policy for the 2019-2020 budget process and to evaluate the policies at the conclusion of this budget season, making any necessary changes and or revisions.
I'll second that. You second that? Okay. Any discussion?
The best way to develop a system is exercise it. So I agree 100%. You can't exercise it.
Like, for one, no, I need a little more of that, so. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we can move forward to first selectmen's report. And Emmett will remind me that if you could just give highlighted portions on this a little bit, you gave us a good amount of great information on your presentation. We don't want to have you have to repeat too many things.
And that's the bulk of it. The one thing that I have noted here in our financial report, on the revenue side, is the building department, the permit fees. At this point, we've collected 81% of our annual budget. Well ahead of us. And if you look at the transfer station fees, we collected 64%. I'm not sure if that's from the more aggressive stance that they're taking. I like to think it is, but we seem to be doing well this year, and even the land use appears to be ahead of itself at this point. So, from a revenue standpoint, we're doing pretty well this year. That's probably about it for me.
Very good. Anyone on our board have questions for our first selectman? Okay. Move on to the next item. We have our liaison reports. The one item I want to include is that you received a new liaison assignment. I was calling you on next, so don't worry. Yeah, let me finish the liaison, if it's okay with the board to do that. You have the new liaison assignments, and this is the updated one as of last meeting. Forgive me for skipping over you, Cindy. We do the next item on the agenda should have been the finance director's report. So, Mrs. Berkey, please provide us with your report.
The November year-to-date budget report continues to track nicely. I did add, if you look at the bottom of page 2, instead of recording all of the storm damage under emergency management, I'm going to break it out for you each month so you can see a running total of the storm damage. So as of November, there's $102,878 that were expended in storm damage. This is, knock on wood, it's been a pretty standard budget year without a great deal of surprises, and as Emmett's highlighted on the revenue so far, that's a pleasant surprise. And to look at the tax collector as well, the collection rate suspension was budgeted at $1,200, and she's already collected $12,900 from that. So as a result of sending accounts to the collection agency, and she's doing very well with interest and penalties and the overall collection rate. And just on land use, to let you know why that's doing so well is their property on Grove Road. There's those small units, and they all needed individual review because I had inquired with Jim saying, wow, you're doing good, and that's part of the reason. The building fees are tracking nicely. You won't see it necessarily reflected in the October 118 grand list, but October 119 will reflect these building permits. And legal's doing well, and you have capital as well.
I have one question regarding the storm damage. Is that numbers of capital that is spent or supplies and services, or or is it services?
It's
that
just
we-
everything. It's all expenditures. We decided, we charge it to emergency management we have in the past. I'm just extracting that out. We can go in and transfer it where we need to. I just want to continue to highlight it for the board.
So when we're looking at that FEMA number, this would be all allocated toward that 25% number that.
Right. And we have been proofing and working with our construction attorney on the construction bids. And he had designed them all FEMA ready, which is a good thing, because now that we're going to receive FEMA funds, the Selectmen's Office, Finance Office, and Public Works had reviewed them, and we're hopefully getting them out in the near future. There's a lot of detail to those bids for the engineering for Hemlock Valley, I always say Helm, and Bon Louis, and Neptune. So we're making sure we're in conformance with the federal procurement regulations.
Do you have any questions from the board? Yes.
Yes, on our expenditures, top of page 2, Public Works, Town Garage. You have my memory refreshed. Maybe I said this before and I forgot, but last year, the actual, let's see here, 61,000. This year, the Town Garage is 38.8, a lot less.
Because we removed all of the cleaning for the buildings out of Town Garage and allocated them to central services. If you recall, all the costs to clean town buildings was in the Town Garage budget for some reason. So they were allocated out to municipal office complex, libraries, et cetera. So we didn't put them all in a budget where they really weren't appropriate.
Okay, thank you. The next question, just below that, transfer station. Last year, the budget, the actual was $603,496. This year it's a lot less, 70,000 less, 533.44. Last year, year to date, the expenditures was 239,000. This year, it's 253,000. So I see less budget, but increasing spend. We're going to make it at the end of the year.
That relates to the hope that we would be hauling our own waste and not paying for the waste, and the whole issue with the transfer station and the vehicle. So there is a likelihood that we'll go over. We're monitoring it carefully.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, education, the bottom line education. Last year it was almost a $20 million budget, and this year it's a little over 20 million. Last year, the year-to-date was 7.7 million, I'm rounding off, and this year it's 6.4. It's $1.3 million less year-to-date.
That could be the timing, Todd, in a month where there's 3 payrolls versus 2. It's not anything of concern, and that number reflects what the town has transferred to Board of Ed funds. So it's not, there's no cause for alarm. It just could be the timing in accounts payable or an extra payroll in 1 month.
So next month, we should see a better situation.
I know I would label it as a better situation, but you might see a swing.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have this time.
Anyone else have a question?
And then you just have your updated budget calendar. We'll continue to update that as we move forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your work. Next item on our agenda is I would go back to the liaison reports, just to see if there anyone had an opportunity to have some correspondence with their liaison assignments.
Yes, I've been slowly getting down my list, a lot slower than I wanted to, but animal control, I met with them, and they're doing fine. They're going to see, probably going to see 1.9% increase in their budget. That's not because of any increased costs, because of reallocation of the fringe benefits and Social Security. It was paid for on the fund last year, previous years, but this year is being moved so that where the benefits are incurred, that's assigned to that particular department. I understand that, just want to let you know.
contact Brian Perry, Chairman of the Board of Ed, and introduce myself as the business officer. They're aware of the change.
Thanks. Any other members? Thank you all. Okay, now we can go to old business. I don't have any old business on here. Is there any option items that I might have overlooked? Okay. New business. We have a Board of Finance budget request. Cindy, do you know anything about that?
Certainly. You have the narrative, and we certainly can flesh out major service level accomplishments and goals going forward. We've reformatted the budget structure a little, so my thought process was that we would work with board members. If you have any key items you want, these bullet points, to let us know, and then I can prepare it for Bill's ultimate review, and you can all take a look next month. Budgets are due to the first selectmen, the first Friday in January, but you would have time at your January meeting to adjust the narrative if you would like to. And then you have a budget sheet where you need to put in your budget requests. And as I just look across your budget, I wouldn't change your auditors. I really wouldn't make any changes to your budget of this year. You seem to be fine. You used very little contingency last year. You used 15,000 of the 90. You've used none of it this year. And if you appropriate the 90,000 in contingency, you're well within keeping of board policy for what the contingency fund should be, which is 0.5% to 1% of the town government budget.
Any questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much.
Is it the pleasure of the board to submit the budget at the same amount as last year? You certainly, through the budget process, can change your own budget, but I need a starting point.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Let's start with that and Bill's.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Okay. We now return to guest and audience comments. Is there anyone that would like to address the board and speak? Being that there are no comments or questions, we will now go to other on this list. Did you have something else, Cindy, that I looked at? Okay. We are now ready to adjourn our meeting. Is there any questions by any of the members before I do that? Yes.
Yes, item 14, other, I have a couple of questions. The annual report, that's all set to go out into this month, at the annual meeting.
The annual meeting is next week. It is our hope it will be printed. I'm waiting on some items from the state to finish the audit. I assume we'll be fine, but I know if we spend money to print, there'll be a change. So if worse comes to worse, we will run copies for it, but it is ready to go. But I don't want to print it until our audit is printed. And incur expenses we don't need to incur.
Is every town in the state on the same calendar so that the state's holding up to everybody?
The holdup for the audit is there is a new GASB, I can't remember, it's 67, 68, or 75. There's a whole bunch of new ones. And it requires that the state do the other post-employment benefits, OPEB, for the municipal employee retirement fund and for the teachers retirement fund. So we made the numbers from their audits to put into our audits. And it was a new requirement that I think caught the state off guard. Shocking.
I have one other question. Excuse me, the auditors. We do have a new contract with the auditors. Something we should think about now, or is that the time for that?
So what I think we're going to do on that is I want to review that because I want to look at the cost associated with putting it out to bid again, given that we have a contract with them, and that would require for us to break that.
I thought it was coming to an end. I thought it was coming to an end. 3-year contract?
It's 3 with 2-year extensions, 2
Oh.
individual year extensions.
Okay. question. I forgot what it is. Oh, yes. I was curious, maybe I'm going to catch Tracy off guard here, but in your roundtable discussion, you talked about debt policy. Where are we as a town in our debt ratio? Debt to budget, debt to capital, debt to reserves. I know there's a ratio we have to watch. I forgot where it is. Finance guy. Where are we there? Are we good there? Anybody know the number?
It's significantly under what would be required based on where those policies. Yeah, we have a very small debt.
Okay. All right.
But I can't tell you the number right now because I don't know it. I can tell you that our committee looked at these numbers and we said, we almost think, wow, that's like significantly lower than what we could have in terms of what we might consider. So it's a low one.
Right, they got that number somewhere?
We'll be providing all those stats.
That will be coming through the committee, and we're working with a financial advisor for guidelines and different matrices to use.
So we haven't formulated the actual number we're going to vote on, but we're working through it right now. So we've asked our financial advisor to give us some estimates of some really solid places that the rating agencies would approve, and the number that we got, a preliminary number, and I don't recall what it was, but I do remember us having the observation that, wow, we're well beyond that.
What they're going to be is a range. If your debt burden is too low, it may be that you're shortchanging things. If it's too high, you've got trouble. And we haven't decided, and we recommend a range for the board to consider. But so far it looks like we're in good shape. Good. And we should have those numbers relatively soon.
We're meeting again before the Christmas holiday, and ideally we'll be able to get formulated.
And the budget's going to have some more performance measurement in it, and I will be including a lot of that data in the budget area as well.
And just to give you a heads up on kind of my vision of our workshops as we go forward, I think one of the more valuable lessons we learned was having the ability to see almost in real time kind of the impact of some of our decisions, and then see the impact on the bottom line is something that we're going to continue this year, so that we can make decisions and talk about things that all of a sudden look at what the impact will be for mill rate and taxes and the rest. So before we conclude, let me do this. I do want to thank everyone here. It is your time, and we appreciate it, and very grateful. And I want to wish, this will be our last meeting for the new year, so I want to wish everyone here on the board and everyone in the attendance of our citizens really happy holiday season, a happy new year, and thanks for everything that you do. So, oh, and also, Jack, I want to say thank you to you too for donating your time. We appreciate it, and when you're a little bit, whenever you want, you can run for the board and come join us. So, thank you. So, with that, we have a motion. All right, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right.